Well, we continue this week in our sermon series, Close Encounters with Christ. All summer long, we've been journeying through Luke's gospel as we discover different characters, different people that have an up-close and personal encounter with Jesus and the way that it changes them. And this week, we encounter what for many of us might be a familiar story of two sisters, Mary and Martha. We know that they're friends of Jesus, they're sisters of Lazarus, and in Luke's gospel, we're told that Jesus enters into Martha's home. Now, it's believed through other passages in Scripture that the sisters lived together, but here in Luke, in this translation, it's Martha's home. So you can imagine Jesus comes in, their friend, a rabbi, one whose reputation is growing and spreading. This is a guest. In our first reading from Genesis, we heard the story of Abraham and Sarah being visited by three visitors and the length they go to be good hosts to these visitors. Abraham tells Sarah to knead bread to create something to feed these guests. They're consumed with hospitality because hospitality is crucial in the first century. It's still crucial in many places around the world. We could argue it's crucial in our society. When somebody comes to our home, we want to be a good host, a generous host. And we see this scene play out, right? We could almost, you could explain it very simply. Mary sits down with Jesus, visiting, spending time with her friend, while Martha busies herself with the work of hospitality. And Martha's upset because she feels like her sister's freeloading, leaving all the work to her. Has anybody here ever worked on a group project? Maybe when you were in school, or maybe now in your work environment, and there's always one or two people in the group that do absolutely nothing, and yet they get the benefit of the grade for the whole group. I think a lot of us instinctively relate to Martha. We like to fancy ourselves Marthas. Why? Because nobody wants to fancy themselves the irresponsible one. I think we all overinflate ourselves as Marthas. Some of you are Marys. I've seen it. But we like to think of ourselves as responsible. We do the work. We're the one who shows up. And I think we resonate with her angst. And yet we see Martha commit something that is like a cardinal sin of relationships. It's a cardinal sin of conflict resolution and management. She does something called triangulation. It happens all the time. Martha's upset at her sister, but instead of talking to her, what does she do? She goes to Jesus. Can you imagine this is a really bad look for Martha? Don't be a Martha. That's what I want to say today. Don't be a Martha. This is what she does. She's mad at her sister. She has a grievance with her. And instead of saying, hey, Mary, can we talk in the other room for a minute? Hey, Mary, would you? She says, hey, Jesus, can you tell her to get up, put an apron on, and come help me? Can you imagine Jesus looking at her like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this energy is like not the vibe I'm looking for. She triangulates Jesus into her own sister conflict. The whole sermon's not about triangulation. I just have to point that out. Because not a weekend goes by where somebody doesn't try to triangulate one of the pastors into a conflict with somebody else in the church. Not a week goes by, you don't do that in your family system. Not a week goes by, we don't do that in our work systems. Can you believe them? Can you tell them to cut it out? Like Luke, right now, what are you doing? You guys are over here wrestling like Jacob and Esau. Nevertheless, we see that Jesus is trying to make a point. I think one, he's just trying to put Martha in her place. Hey, stop that. But secondly, I think Jesus is reminding Martha that something more valuable is in front of them. You see, I think Jesus is always after connection before completion. This isn't to mitigate or to downplay what needed done. Martha's doing nothing wrong by being a host. She's doing nothing wrong by busying herself with some of the other things that need to happen in the household. But Jesus wants to drive the point home. She wants Martha to be present. He says to her, you are distracted by many things. He doesn't say the things are unimportant. He doesn't say the things don't matter. He doesn't say the things don't have their place in the right timing, but Martha's missing out on the moment. I have to imagine Jesus didn't care about being hosted as much as he cared about connecting. And Mary's connecting. Connection before completion of the list. I have lived most of my life with a list of some sort. Maybe you're a list maker too. I first started developing the list when I was in high school. It was the list of things I needed to do. I think I was about a junior when I started developing the list. Take the ACT prep course, study for the ACT, get an internship, start saving money to buy that car that I wanted to buy in high school. The list kind of followed me through college. Complete these courses, register on time, find a better internship, apply to graduate schools. Lists have followed me through my entire life, and lists have served me well. And yet I've found that I can turn anything into a list. Maybe you can relate. I was thinking recently about one of the best summers of my life. My friend Chris and I left the Ohio State campus, piled into his little Saturn, and drove from Columbus, Ohio to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to spend the entire summer living and working on a dude ranch. My counselor at the VA, this is post-Iraq, had told me that I ought to, hey, Luke, let's cut it out. Thank you. Was telling me that I needed to spend some time outdoors to decompress, and instead of getting an internship, we might consider doing something, getting an internship with the National Park Service, spending time outside. Don't worry about your list, the counselor was telling me. Just decompress. Because the counselor saw what I couldn't see in myself. I needed to chill. I told this to my friend Chris, and he said, actually, an alumni of our fraternity has a connection in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's like 7 steps to Kevin Bacon, but somehow we ended up working and living on the Triangle X Ranch in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And we started to get this ideas of grandeur in our mind about what we might do out there. And I kept thinking, this is perfect. Big sky country, mountains and lakes and rivers. I will definitely decompress. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a list for all the ways that I will decompress. I'm going to train for a marathon out there. Higher altitude, I'll come back to the flatlands of Columbus, Ohio, and I will be a running machine. Well, I ought to look up all of the great hikes I could take, Chris and I could take together. What are the different trails we need to accomplish? I made a list of the trails. I made a list of all the things that we were going to do. We're going to camp out under the stars. We're going to roast marshmallows. I had a banjo that was given to me as a gift by a friend. This is wild, I know. And the friend didn't know, I knew. There ain't no way I can play that thing. I have no musical bones in my body, but on the list was learn to play the banjo. When we showed up on the ranch, we learned what our jobs were going to be. And I had an idea driving out there. We didn't even know what we were going to do on the ranch. They just hired us as summer staff. But when we arrived, we learned there are 2 types of employees at the Triangle X Ranch. Real deal, bona fide cowboys and cowgirls. And then college help. Well, shoot, I guess we're the college help. And they handed out work assignments. Chris got the job of being a cookout cook, a barbecue chef. He worked with 3 other guys. They had a beat-up pickup truck. And what they would do is every day of the week, they would load up the truck with like enough food and meat and barbecue sauce and fire to go drive up the mountain or down the trail and start cooking at 7 a.m. Because by 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the wealthy suburbanites that were playing cowboy for the week would ride their little horses and ponies on the trail, and have their saddle, so they needed to have some barbecue by the Snake River. That's Chris's job. He just cooked barbecue. He learned all these recipes. And I thought, that's not building a fence or like digging a ditch, but that's still kind of manly. Like you're making barbecue over an open wood flame. So I'm waiting for my job thinking, they saw my application. I'm a combat veteran. They're going to have me doing something super cool. Ranch dishwasher? Now, here's what I know now. They were probably thinking, this guy might be like, let's just put him in the back of the kitchen. We don't know how stable he is. And so I'm like, what? I'm the dishwasher at the Triangle X Ranch? That was my job, washing dishes. So cool, yeah. 3 times a day. And not just like 1 cleanup, 3 cleanups at every meal. Because at the Triangle X Ranch, all of the workers, the cowboys, cowgirls, and college kids, ate first, family style, everything family style. And after they would eat, I'd clean all those dishes. Then the children, the vacationing children, the little princes and princesses of the ranch would come. Sorry, I was the summer help. I'm that guy in the back of the kitchen. Come on, kids. Anyway, they'd come and they would all eat, and I'd clean up their food. Then they'd go off to the kiddie activities. Then the parents and the paying guests would come, and they would eat. So every meal, I had 3 waves of dishes. And I learned something. I learned that I could get to my list quicker if I kind of rushed the staff. Like we'd be eating, I'd be done with my food, and then they'd be kind of half done, and I'd stand up, and I'd just kind of stand over the back of them like, you done? I'd like get their plates in the bin, I'd take it back, I'd wash it. Those poor kids that ate, I rushed them through so many pancake breakfasts and Cheerios, like, you're done, Tommy, you're done. Sarah, you're done. Here, I'd clean it up. I couldn't rush the adults, but if I could get those first groups in and out sooner, then maybe the adults would come. And then I was just waiting. You can imagine those 2 like kitchen doors with the little window portholes. I'm like in the back looking out. Are they done? And I'd rush through cleaning all the dishes. And why would I do this? Because after breakfast was done, I had 2.5 to 3 hours of complete free time to get to my list. To go on a run, to go on a hike, to fiddle with that banjo, to turn this great big invitation of relaxation, I'd get to it finally. And then I'd have to show back up for lunch and do the same, and show back up for dinner and do the same. In the first half of the summer, this was the energy, the vibe through which I was living. And I think my friend Chris started to pick up on some dysfunction, dysregulation. He's hot and sweaty at the end of the day. Oh, yeah. And then they would get back some random hour with dirty barbecue pots, and I'd have to clean up his work. And he started noticing that by halfway through the summer, Chris was like, he had like a great tan going. He smelled like Sweet Baby Ray's all day, but it was like a different vibe. He was like mellowed out. He had a rhythm of life that I was envious of. And the harder I kept trying to relax through my list, the more stressed I felt by these good things. And then one day, Chris and I, we went to this popular overlook about halfway to Jackson, downtown Jackson. We went to this popular overlook, and you could watch the big buses pull up with tourists. And we were watching as these people were getting on and off the big tour bus to go to the vista to get the picture-perfect snapshot of the Teton mountain range, Mount Moran and all of the beautiful mountains. And he's watching it, and he leans over to me, and he says, Lorne, you're a lot like those tourists. I said, what? He said, watch. Another bus pulled up. From the moment the bus stops, about half the people will get off the bus and back on the bus the entire time, looking at the mountain range through the lens of their camera. Click, 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 and then they're back on the bus. And he said, and you know what I think? I don't think they ever actually saw the mountain. He said, you're kind of living your life through the lens of a camera and not actually living it. He said, why don't you throw away your list? Why don't you just be still enough to heal, to rest, to connect with God? Chris is a devout Christian to this day. He said, it makes me think of Psalm 46. He said, you're Lutheran. I think that my pastor was telling me that's what Martin Luther was inspired by to write A Mighty Fortress is Our God. And he opened up Psalm 46 to me and walked me through it. He said, the world is in chaos in Psalm 46. Nation raging against nation, the earth crumbling, everything in an uproar, kind of like the front row here. And he said, and yet through the middle of all that chaos, there is a stream who makes glad the city of God. And then we have those famous words, be still and know that I am God. Be still. I struggle with stillness. I really struggle with it right now in my life. I have more opportunity than I'm used to have moments or days of stillness. And I find myself like I was living that summer long ago with the list of just clean the floors, do the dishes, go to the grocery store, do this, get this, get this, get this, get this, get this. And I could lie to myself and say it's because I'm a super productive person who's responsible and man, look at me go. Or I could be honest and say sometimes it's uncomfortable to sit still. But what I have learned time and again is that in the stillness, in the quiet, Jesus speaks. God shows up to remind us that even when things are not wholly right, we are safe, we are loved, and that God is with us. And so we're going to do something for about a minute and a half, which we don't normally do, especially at this service. We're going to end the sermon with a minute and a half of silence for you to be still, to settle down. And on the back end of that, we'll pray, and then we'll sing, and then we will baptize, and then we'll pray again, and we'll make lots of noise for God, to God. But I trust that in the next minute and a half to 2 minutes, God will speak.